Hello and welcome. Welcome to Insight Meditation Center, which has become much larger than this place, this building that I'm sitting in, this meditation room. It extends now outwards to wherever. Oh, if you're attending, I'm going to turn something off here. Hang on a minute. So hello and welcome. And I've just come back from teaching a retreat at the Insight Retreat Center. And so it's still a little bit with me, the atmosphere of the retreat. And the atmosphere, one aspect of it, that one way of describing it, is a spaciousness, experience of vast space inside one and outside, an experience of silence, recognizing a silence within and without, and a stillness. And as I taught this, or pointed to this in the last days of the retreat, I pointed out that these can coexist with their opposites. So space, the experience of space, can be experienced together with the objects that exist within space, forms. And it's possible to experience both. It's possible to fixate on either one, but there's wisdom to be found in both being aware of space and form, objects and the space around them. It's a support for not being fixated. Inner stillness can be there together with movement. And somehow each highlights the other. And in that highlighting of both together, there's less opportunities or less interest in fixating on any one or making big conclusions or reacting, allowing each to be there. When we're aware of silence, it can coexist with sound, with noise. Inner silence can be delicious because it's an alternative to the constant chatter of the mind. But it's possible to have thoughts, and that which is not thinking, the silence which is not thoughts, to coexist, and in so be free of both. And for today, there can be clinging, attachment, craving, and the absence of those, the state experience of what is empty, of greed, hatred, delusion, empty of attachments, empty of grasping and clinging, that which is empty of preoccupation. And those can coexist. We can be attached and we can be aware of the non-attachment that's there side by side. And one way to help with this is to appreciate, recognize that for anything that you're attached to, clinging to, caught in, somehow fixated on, or it's fixated on you, there are almost infinite number of things at this very moment that you're not craving to. You might have something on your mind, something you're quite concerned with, something you can't put down, something your mind is chewing on quite a bit. And so there's some subject, something that you're attached to. And if you look around in the place you're sitting, there's a lot of things that you're not attached to. I don't know, I don't want to name particular things, but you're probably not too much, but probably not attached to the corners of the room. Probably not attached to the direction of the grains of wood of any wooden object in your room. There's all kinds of things. You're maybe not attached to the space, the empty space particularly. There's no fixation unless every time I name something, the habit to get attached picks up. But maybe you can feel that side by side with any preoccupation, fixation you have, there's also all the things that you're aware of for which there is no attachment. The two coexist. So there is attachment, clinging, fixation, and of that which is empty of fixation, the awareness that's empty of attachment. Attachment and the emptiness of it, attachment and the absence of it, can be exquisite. You don't have to get rid of attachment. You can be aware of it in a wider context, a wider field of attention, where there's more going on. And the more is, there's also non-attachment right here that might keep you lighter, softer, looser. So assuming a meditation posture, and gently closing your eyes, and feeling whatever degree of stillness, stability you can establish in your body. Maybe with each exhale, relaxing into the stability of your posture. Wherever the stability is, and maybe that stability is part of the stillness you can feel in your body. And in feeling the stillness, even very slightly, you can also be aware of the movements of the body. Where they're almost like partners in a dance. Stillness and movement of the body. The movement might be very slight, and no need to do any intentional movement, just the natural movement. Maybe as you breathe. At the beginning of a meditation, maybe you still have a lot of thoughts. Thinking might be kind of like the inner sound, inner noise. And side by side, there's also an inner silence. There is that which is empty of thoughts, right beyond the edges of your thinking. And then there's a feeling of space. Maybe you can be aware of the space in the room where you are, even with your eyes closed. That the space is just beyond the edges of your body. The edges, sensations of your body can coexist with the space right next to it. With the eyes closed, maybe the edges of your body and the space around it melt together a bit. And then there's the space within your body. This inner space which coexists with all the sensations of the body as they appear. And gathering space and silence and stillness around your breathing. Feeling the movements of your body, maybe deep in the torso, of breathing. The sensations that come and go. Side by side with an inner stillness. where the sensations of breathing arise and pass within the wider space just next to, beyond the edges of your sensations. As if space receives the sensations. And then to be attuned to the silent awareness of breathing that coexist with whatever thoughts you have with being mindful, with maybe the silent awareness of breathing supports thinking to be very simple, thinking about mindfulness of breathing. Thinking about silent awareness of breathing, coexisting with silent awareness, inviting the thinking mind to calm, be quieter, to be reassured. It's okay to relax into here. And as you breathe, be aware of what doesn't cling, doesn't grasp, is not attached. Where in the cycle of breathing is there non-attachment, a kind of freedom, an absence of attachment? Where the absence of attachment invites attachments to relax. As we come to the end of this sitting, I would like to quote Walt Whitman, who said in his poem, "I am large, I contain multitudes." Based on this meditation, I am spacious. There is space, vast space, within which we have a multitude. We are a multitude. And the two together can foster a peace that holds everything side by side. And we might discover in that wider peace awareness that can hold all of who we are. Right there, there's also a deeper sensitivity, a deeper kindness, a deeper care in how we gaze upon the world. As if our hearts and minds, the depth of our hearts and minds can touch and feel and know the depths of others, the multitude of people, gazing upon them kindly. And may we bring to the forefront our capacity for love and care and goodwill. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And may we hold a great wide vision that fosters such goodwill. Thank you. Hello and warm greetings on this Monday. I'm happy to be back here after being gone for a week, teaching a retreat, happily teaching a retreat at the Insight Retreat Center. And perhaps I'm inspired by the retreat would like this, for the theme for this week to be emptiness. Emptiness is the concept of it, the idea of it, the practice of it, the experience of it, is often celebrated in Buddhism, in some schools of Buddhism more than others. Uh, Sunyata is often known as sunnata, and emptiness. and and some people have had some contact with this concept and can be quite inspired by it. For other people, it's perplexing. How can an absence be so valuable? And so I want to talk, at least for this week, something about the concept of emptiness. It's an important part of, excuse me, it's an important part of all forms of Buddhism. In the school of Theravada Buddhism, the emptiness is more of something that happens in deep practice. It's relevant for people who are quite experienced in practice. And so usually it's not a beginner's topic. Whereas in other schools of Buddhism, like when I was studying Zen, people would often hear teachings of emptiness as a beginner. And they were often taught and emphasized quite a bit throughout the practice. And in fact, in Zen, there was a very famous, very common chant we chanted every morning called the Heart Sutra. And that emphasized this teaching of emptiness and this powerful beginning where it says, form is empty, emptiness is form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. All things, everything is empty. And this chant goes on and has all these negating statements that when you chant over and over again, something gets kind of dropped away, drop, drop, drop. And even if it's very subtle and not, certainly not reflective, not like you think about it. And they say no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no state of mind consciousness, and it goes on, no, empty, empty, empty. And if you memorize the chant like I did, and it resonates or it echoes through the day, it's a powerful way of not clinging, of just kind of letting go of the kind of taking things as being substantial or real or solid that is almost required in order to become attached, to cling. The Theravadan school doesn't emphasize it that much. It doesn't emphasize it until it becomes relevant in people's practice. And when the absence, which is emptiness, begins standing out in the highlight for a practitioner. So it's not really often offered as a beginner. In the ancient texts, in the teachings of the Buddha, there's a marvelous story, very brief little encounter that I delight in, where the Buddha's disciple Sariputta comes out of meditation, and apparently he's quite radiant. And the Buddha points that out, says your features, your face is shining. In what meditation were you dwelling? And Sariputta says, I was dwelling in the samadhi of emptiness. I was dwelling in emptiness. And so here, the word is emptiness, which can be off-putting and feel like it's nothing. And how could emptiness be any value at all? But for Sariputta, it provided him with a glow, a radiance that even the Buddha recognized enough to ask him, what meditation were you abiding in? So this experience of emptiness. And in Theravadan Buddhism, this Buddhism I'm teaching from here, emptiness is less a philosophy, it's less a philosophy of reality. This is what the nature of reality. Reality is empty, and the emptiness teachings emphasizes the emptiness, the kind of the non-reality, the non-substantiality of all things, or emphasizing that everything is interdependent in interconditions. Nothing exists alone without arising in dependence on other things. There's nothing that's essential. It's kind of a non-essentialist teaching. But it's kind of a generalized view of everything. So it's kind of a philosophical metaphysics of sorts. The earliest Buddhism tends not to make these metaphysical broad statements about reality, but rather keep focusing on what's happening here with us, our direct experience. And for there, in Theravada, emptiness then is not a philosophy, but it's an experience. And so I'll talk about more as we go along. And in the early texts, there's two related topics. There's emptiness itself, which is often presented as an experience. And then there's the insight. And the insight that things are empty. Things are empty of attachments. Our state of mind becomes empty of attachments, not clinging to anything at all. And that is fantastic, to have a mind that is not hindered, a mind which has no obstacles, a mind that's not been hijacked by anything, a mind that is completely free, open, flexible, relaxed, ready to respond to the world, ready to be intelligent and be creative, but is not caught in anything that interferes with that openness and that clarity. And there's a teaching about how certain things are empty and how they're empty. And then between teachings about how things are, what's empty, the empty teachings, there's also this teaching on emptiness. In between those two, there's the practice of emptying. And the path of Buddhism, the early tradition, has two elements, two kind of distinct ways in which the path of practice deepens and unfolds over time. One is through awareness practices, becoming more aware, having insight, having mindfulness, seeing clearly what's here. The other is the process of emptying out the projections, emptying out the views, the beliefs, the ideas of self that interfere with freedom, interfere with seeing the freedom, seeing the phenomenal, wonderful emptiness that makes someone radiant. So there's a kind of a delusion and ignorance by which we see that delusion falls away. And so that's the emptying process. So there's what's empty, there's the emptying, and there's emptiness. So in the next 3 days this week, I'll go through each of those, and then have something to say on Friday, tying it all together with the mindfulness practice that we do. And but for today, I would like to highlight that emptiness, emptying, emptiness, what they all have in common is absence. And there's an absence might seem to have no value at all, and that what's valuable is things. Absence of money is not as good as having money. Absence of having a relationship is not as good as having a relationship. So we always want something, and that's what the mind gets caught by. And but the absence of it doesn't mean that they don't exist for us, but it means that the mind is absence of preoccupation, being caught in it, being constricted and narrowed by it. The mind becomes spacious. The absence of fear, the absence of greed, the absence of hostility, resentment, the absence of confusion and doubt and So there's this absence. So I'll give you an example of how an absence might be quite significant, so that you might give some orientation to absence this week and how they could be quite helpful for you and meaningful and maybe even profound. If someone spends a long time in jail, in prison, I visited people who have been in prison for a long time and visited them in prison. I met a man once who spent 25 years in solitary confinement. He was a remarkable man. He had been transformed in some powerfully good way during that time. I think he'd found a practice. But in any case, people can stay a long time in prison. And now always behind bars, always behind locked doors, always inside the walls of the prison. And then one day maybe they're paroled and let out. And in the next week, months, maybe years, rest of their life, when they walk down the street, they might look to other people just like an ordinary person, nothing special, just a person. And it's just an ordinary day, and people who see you might see the prisoner who's been released, might stay up preoccupied in their thoughts and what's next and what they have to do and their suffering or whatever. But the former prisoner who's walking down the street, the absence of jail, the absence of being confined is ever present. It's so wondrous, it's so amazing, it's so clear that now there are no bars, no doors, no walls. And so that absence might stay present for the rest of their life. It's really there, it's right next to them. They appreciate it. And in the same way, the absence of attachment, the absence of clinging, the absence of being caught, the absence of suffering, to have that drop away in a significant way can be as significant for you as coming out of prison can be for a prisoner. The possibility of a transformation of letting go, of emptying out, can be so full and so clear, it stands in dramatic contrast to what it's like to be, if you maybe hopefully you'll forgive me, absence of being full of yourself. Being empty of yourself is not a loss. The loss comes from being full of yourself in all the negative ways that's used. That expression is used in English. A kind of conceit that is actually a disconnection. There's a profound emptiness, empty of self, which is a profound intimacy with oneself and life. So emptiness, the topic of this week. Thank you.